You know, it's interesting what we've heard from Ukraine is they're willing to pay the price for the world's safety, and that's what they're doing right now. And now other countries, I think, are stepping up and feeling that it's possible they could actually make the world safer. Let's bring in columnist at the Washington Post, Max Boot. He's a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and former U.S. Senator, now an NBC News and MSNBC political analyst, Claire McCaskill. She served on the Armed Services Committee. Max, I want to ask you about Germany. In the past, you've been a little critical. Perhaps is Germany stepping up more now with this latest move?
Well, Germany is certainly stepping up more than they have in the last couple of months. I think there was some premature talk when the Russian invasion began that the sleeping giant of Europe was awakening and all of German foreign policy was going to dramatically change. And that was a bit of an exaggeration. That didn't happen right away. I think there's Chancellor Scholz has been dragging his feet on sending heavy weaponry to Ukraine and also on transitioning Germany away from reliance on Russian gas, where the Germans are providing about $220 million a day to Russia, which goes straight into funding the Russian war machine. But in the last few days, I think there has been a little bit of a shift, at least in terms of heavy weaponry and starting to transition away, at least from Russian oil and gas. I think from Russian oil and coal, rather. I think the issue is going to be whether Germany will transition away from Russian natural gas, on which they are still very dependent. I think the fastest and easiest way to do that would be to table the plan to shut down the German nuclear industry. They still have 3 nuclear plants remaining that are supposed to be closed by the end of the year. They closed 3 at the end of last year. They need to reopen the closed plants, keep the open ones still open. That's the fastest way to end their unconscionable and immoral dependence on Russian energy.
Claire, let me ask you about this $33 billion package announced by President Biden yesterday and its prospects in the Congress where you served for many years. So you have Democrats saying we want to attach about $22 billion worth of COVID aid to that same package. And then Republicans say, oh, OK, as long as we're doing that, you got to keep Title 42 to protect the border. If it becomes that kind of a conversation, what happens to this money?
Well, it's a sticky wicket right now. There are 3 pieces, like you said, Willie. There is the COVID aid. There is Ukrainian aid, which has the most bipartisan support. Easily would go through if it was all by itself. So the question is, can they get enough Republican support for the COVID aid to get both of them across the finish line? And then the other big looming question is Title 42. The Republicans are insisting in the Senate that they get a vote to stop the change in policy at the border related to 42. So, and that's going to be a hard vote for Schumer to let him take, because there'll be a bunch of Democrats that are up this year. They're going to vote with the Republicans. There is a widespread feeling in Congress among Democrats that the White House has really bungled the Title 42 issue on the border.
Max, I want to ask you, I'm curious. You and I both grew up Cold Warriors because of our homeland. You were born in Moscow. I was born in Doraville, Georgia, in the Deep South. So we're both Cold Warriors. We had no choice. You got out of there. And you and I have both been disillusioned by our former Republican Party because of the things they did not do, because of the things they did do while Donald Trump was president. I am curious, so are you heartened like me to see bipartisanship get back to Congress, bipartisanship for the most part, to get back to politics on both sides of Pennsylvania Avenue, with the understanding that this sort of tyranny cannot stand from Russia?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely heartening, Joe, to see the huge majority by which the Ukrainian Lend-Lease bill passed yesterday, to see the near unanimity in support for Ukraine. I think that's hugely important. And it shows that there is still recognition among the Republican leadership and among most of the Republicans on the Hill about the threat that Russia poses to the entire civilized world, in spite of Donald Trump's infatuation with Vladimir Putin. But here's the rub, Joe. Trump is still very much in Putin's corner. You still will not hear Trump say anything bad about Putin. He talks about the invasion of Ukraine like it's a natural disaster and blames it on Biden rather than on Putin. And of course, the most popular propagandist of the right, Tucker Carlson, he has nothing bad to say about the Russian invasion either. He thinks it's a distraction from the invasion of our southern border. And so, unfortunately, even though I think most Republican leaders and most rank and file Republicans understand the evil that Russia represents at this point in time, that's not true of the guy who is the most likely Republican nominee in 2024 or the guy who is the most popular spokesman for Republicans today. And that's a big problem. And unfortunately, Joe, I think that the problem from my mind is that although most Republicans disagree with Donald Trump about Russia, they don't worship Putin the way that Donald Trump worships Putin. It's not a make or break issue. They're not going to reject Donald Trump because he has been revealed to be this horrifying Putin sycophant. And so I think that, my concerns about the future of the Republican Party and the future of the country remain, unfortunately, very much intact, even though I'm very much cheered to see the bipartisan support that Ukraine is now receiving.
I do think it's going to be. I mean, Claire McCaskill, I'm curious your political insights here. It's been my operating theory for some time. Donald Trump lost to Joe Biden in part because he lost the Atlanta suburbs. So that very place where I was born, that was Democratic when I was born, became Republican as I was growing up, is now once again Democratic. If you look at the 2020 elections, maybe it bounces back in 2022 to Republicans. But in presidential races, you look at what Donald Trump has done. He lost the suburbs of Atlanta, the suburbs of Philly, the suburbs of Detroit. And a lot of those people just are never going back to Donald Trump. You take January the 6th, you take this invasion, you look at what Donald Trump said even after the invasion. And I just think, again, this is like a football game that's a game of inches. Whenever you're running for the presidency, it's a game of inches. And I've got to believe Republicans understand this guy is not going to win a presidential contest again, that it might have to be somebody like Ron DeSantis who delivers Trumpism without all the baggage of Donald Trump.
Well, the biggest problem the Republican Party has is, in fact, Donald Trump being so popular with the calcified base of the Republican Party. That's why everybody on Capitol Hill says horrible things about Trump behind his back, but parrots what they need to say to please him publicly because they're afraid of their base. They're not just afraid of Donald Trump. They're afraid of the people that are just so devoted to Donald Trump. So Trump can win the nomination if he wants it. I think it would be not good for the Republican Party and certainly not good for our country. But he owns it. He owns that nomination if he wants it. And the more DeSantis acts like he's going to take it from him, the more Trump's going to want it. So you're going to end up with, if DeSantis actually takes him on, that would be very interesting. But I would probably bet on Trump in that matchup.